Now, ladies and gentlemen, we've had many conversations on this channel and on Twitter about what the Cowboys could do at pick 26 and also further along in the draft, whether it be a wide receiver, a cornerback, linebacker, an edge rusher, you name it. We've talked about pretty much every other position. We haven't had the same dude get taken in our mock drafts we've done so far. But the question is as we get further to the draft, go through free agency, could tight end be a possibility at pick 26? Let's get into it. Now, before I dive any further into this video, if you guys can hit the like button, that'd be greatly appreciated. Subscribe if you're new, and hit that notification bell as well. That average is dropping. We are now at 84% of you guys that are not subscribed. So if you fall into that 84%, let's keep the train rolling and get that number continuously going down. So hit subscribe so you get more Cowboys content in your feed. Now, as we've gone through this draft process, a lot of the times the Dallas Cowboys like to meet with certain prospects, and they don't even touch on them whatsoever once draft time comes around. But there are sometimes those moments where they meet with someone, they really like the prospects, maybe it matches with what they want to do, and they just roll from there. So they met with guys like Luke Schoonmaker and also Dalton Kincaid, which has been a popular name as of recently. So the question is, okay, would that make sense at 26, and really what has to happen for that to occur? So we've been hearing from Dallas media individuals as a consensus, not just one person, that the Cowboys are looking to take a combination of a pass catcher, which is wide receiver or tight end, cornerback or running back, whatever order that may be, in the first 3 rounds, which is something I very much so believe because those are one of the pressing needs that the Cowboys really had to address, and also linebacker, but we'll see there. So really, you kind of had to figure, okay, if they navigate the offseason a certain way, that can really answer our question. So we've been told the Dallas Cowboys are working on something big. We know Dalton Schultz is on his way out. You have Jake Ferguson, Peyton Hendershot at your tight end room. I'm going to put those guys on the back burner because I'm going to talk about that once we get to the whole tight end talk. If the Cowboys' big move is for a wide receiver, I personally think wide receiver is off the board, even though I think you should draft a guy. Just my personal opinion. So let's say that Odell Beckham Jr. is their big move. I don't think it's a big move. That's just my personal opinion. But let's just say that's their big move. They add Odell Beckham Jr. into this wide receiving core. I think that just answers everybody's question. Hey, the Cowboys might not go after a receiver in terms of the pass catcher realm of things, and they don't draft a guy at wide receiver, maybe if it's later in the draft. So I think that if they go after a wide receiver, whoever it's, DeAndre Hopkins, a guy like OBJ, whoever, I think if they go after some guys, I don't think they're going to draft a wide receiver, especially if they go big. Make sure you put the air quotes on that, big, with the wide receiver move. So now you go into the draft, right? Let's say now you have your first 3 picks. You added Odell Beckham Jr. Maybe you add a linebacker in free agency. Maybe you're lucky and you get Bobby Wagner or someone else. You bring LVE back. If the Cowboys make those moves, I think a tight end at 26 becomes a way, way, way more possible because now you kind of look at your draft board and you say, okay, I don't need a wide receiver. Even though, hey, I'm all for BPA. If that's the best guy on the board, you take him. That's just my opinion. That goes for tight end too. Like, if the tight end is going to be, hey, this guy is the flashing red dot on there, you got to go with it. I mean, it's the best player on the board. I'm not going to complain if you're like, hey, he was the best dude on the board. Now, I'm still evaluating the tight ends and where I think they kind of sort themselves out. But getting to the whole thing, so let's say the Cowboys take a Dalton Kincaid. Now, him and Schoonmaker are both older guys. They're going to be, 24, 25, and so they're older dudes as they're coming into this process, but they're very talented. I don't want people to think that these guys are not talented just because we don't want to take a tight end. These guys, like Dalton Kincaid, for example, would be a guy that you're getting a brand new type of weapon that you never had at the tight end position in years or ever. And that is something that I have been screaming for at the top of my lungs for years now. Get a tight end that can be a legitimate vertical threat and a mismatch nightmare. Now, you can get that in later rounds. There's no question about that. But when I look at a guy like a Jake Ferguson and a Peyton Hendershot, they can be serviceable, but not at a level that can ultimately help you out down the road or be that type of threat that you would want to see. Like, people look at a Travis Kelce, a George Kittle, and if you want to throw a Dallas Goedert in there or whoever else is your favorite flavor of tight end that's an elite at a pass catching and vertical threat type of ability, that's something that's very valuable to have, especially because the league is becoming more pass happy. And if you want to put weapons around your quarterback, this would be a pick that I would think about doing if you make the necessary moves at wide receiver. That's the key thing. I'm not going to be upset if he is the pick. Like, if they took Dalton Kincaid, I'm not crying over spilled milk. I want Cowboys fans to be very understanding here that this is kind of where the league's going, is having a tight end that can be a vertical threat. Again, you can, get by with a guy like Jake Ferguson and Peyton Hendershot being the 1-2 punch. But you kind of have to think, okay, if the draft board falls a particular way, Dalton Kincaid is the best player on the board, and you think that you can get a guy that can be better than what you have at the tight end position and be a legitimate threat in your passing game, especially if you're trying to build a West Coast scheme, which I think he would definitely help in that, I think you go for it. I don't have any complaints about it, but what I will say, and the caveat to this entire conversation, and this is what's key here, is that you need to make the necessary moves for me to be accepting of a pick. That's the thing, is that if you take a tight end without making moves at wide receiver, then you have to make sure you game plan this dude as being your number 2 option, because that's what the Cowboys apparently really like to do, is have like your number 1 wide receiver threat and then your tight end being also a real big guy there too, which for me, if I want the Cowboys to really do the best with that kind of combination, go get the guy that can be an upgrade at that position. But you have to make the moves. If you go get OBJ or you trade a pick to go get a DeAndre Hopkins, I'll be a bit more on board with Dalton Kincaid, and maybe he will be in the mock drafts. Not because I want to force it, but because he could end up being the best player on the board. And as we wrap up this soliloquy here and the video itself, one of the biggest things I have to say is that if you're someone that is a BPA guy or gal, where you're like, hey, I really want the best player on the board regardless of position, you have to factor in tight end, quarterback, wide receiver, you name it, right? If you think that this person is the best player on the board and it makes sense for what the Cowboys are trying to do, you have to go with that. That includes a guy like Dalton Kincaid or Luke Schoonmaker. Now, I've had conversations with everybody else. I have yet to put, Dalton Kincaid on my big board for where he's going to rank. People put first-round grades on him and said that if he was selected by a team like the Cowboys, he'd be one hell of a player for them. But the big thing is that if you're going to say BPA regardless of position, tight ends included. Now, you can get value with what you have right now, but if you can get a guy that can be an A1 day 1 contributor rather than you're drafting a dude that's going to be a bench warmer or someone that you hope can be something, I'd rather you just go with the guy that I know is going to be a productive player. That includes at tight end. We got to remember that Jake Ferguson and Peyton Hendershot, while they are good at what they do, you can do better. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Yes, you can do better with what you have there. If you're trying to ultimately make this team better, tight end is included. Wide receiver is included. Running back is included. Every position's included. Maybe besides quarterback, because we know where we're at there. So let's just keep that with what we have now and move forward. BPA is going to be something that if you want that, tight end has to be included too. How you grade the tight ends compared to other guys, like if it was Nolan Smith versus Dalton Kincaid, I would rather have Nolan Smith because I like Nolan Smith more. That's just where I'm at right now. But you know what? If you make the necessary moves and put yourself in a position where you're going to go BPA in round 1, I am not complaining with who you take. With that being said, guys, I do hope you enjoyed this video. Tell me what you guys think. Would you be upset if the Cowboys take a tight end in the first round or at any point in the draft, and why? And if you could, tell me down below. With that being said, guys, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and hit the notification bell on the way out. And this is Space Cowboy Media signing out. Have a good one.